Apparently 7 o'clock according to Stephanie's noises, so let us please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, everyone, welcome to the second regular board meeting in January 2023 of the Ballston Board of Trustees. Remember, for those watching on Zoom, switch to gallery mode because sound is only going to come from one of the pictures, so gallery mode will be your best bet for this. As Stephanie, I can see, is racing to try to do that right now. And Stephanie Bitter is joining us by Zoom as our village attorney tonight. Carla, it's just Stephanie Bitter versus Carla Bittner, who is coming soon, I believe, when she is freed up, also via Zoom. We thought with the elements the way they were all day, that would make most sense to not have them drive all the way here for the meeting. Let's start with the minutes. May I get a motion that the minutes of the 1/9/23 meeting be approved?
I'll make the motion.
Trustee Baskin.
I'll second.
Trustee Fandesa, discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Mayor's announcements. I promised you State of Village address between these two meetings, the last one and this one. Unfortunately, it'll be a couple days from now, most likely. We've just been so busy with stuff that we'll be coming with that very soon, so that's coming up. Also, just want to thank our DPW. Last week, it was a little harrowing for them during the one storm where we got a lot of ice and snow as we lost 2 dump trucks due to mechanical issues, and then the mechanics have to go and fix those. They're usually in our plow duty. Today, I was talking to Scott Kearns and Jeff Garris earlier today, and they said they had a good day. And I saw it for myself that they did, so thank you to them. Also, thank you to the town of Milton, who's been handling our Colonial Hills duties. They've been doing a great job as well. We've been getting some positive comments about that as well. So, a great collective effort by everybody, and it looked like it was a nice, safe day for the most part, despite the school closings, etc. Probably kids who were out having fun today a little bit to a certain degree, so that was good to see. That's it for now for me. Let's go to liaison reports, and we'll start with Trustee Fandesa.
I'll let Ben fill in as well for this, but we both attended the Arts Committee last meeting, and they've decided to make the first meeting of the month a business meeting, and then the second meeting of the month more of a creative brainstorming sort of session. And they had some great conversations and thinking up ideas to beautify our community and bring some other opportunities for people to enjoy the arts. But that's all I have for right now, and I'm sure Ben has others input.
Trustee Bass, go right ahead.
For the Arts Committee, they had a great conversation thinking about what art projects to do for 2023, and they're going to refine that for next meeting, prioritize and think about what's feasible. So it's very exciting stuff. In terms of senior services, Captain, I'm happy to report that in 2022 they had 28 care receivers, 11 exclusively in the Wellness Express and 17 in both CareLinks and Wellness Express, and that's up from 8 the year before. So I was concerned because we support them. We give them $8,000, and 8 people isn't very many people to support with $8,000. So they have a new person, or she's been there 2 years anyway, and things have really increased. So that's great. It's a great program. You can find them on the website if you know anybody who's a senior or caregiver and needs some extra help in the home with chores or transportation. The Park and Tree Board, Joe Acey put together a really nice wayfinding sign for Kelly Park. That board is still reviewing it, and eventually it'll come to this board. I saw a draft, and it looks very nice. Shows the trails and just the overall area.
That was Scott's though, right, that actually worked with Joe to put that together, if I remember
I
correctly?
don't know who else did.
I thought it was Scouts that had done it.
Scouts?
Yep, I believe
Well,
so.
this little sign, oh, go ahead.
Go, Judy.
It was a Eagle Scout, the kiosk was an Eagle Scout project that was finished last year. And through Friends of the Caterers and Joe AC, they came up with the parameters of the sign. And he mostly did the sign, but others had input.
Right, so thank you to all of them as well. I just want to make sure we give credit where credit's due.
The tree park and tree board's working on a tree map and getting high-risk trees to DBW. They're prioritizing tree stump removal, which stumps to take out first. They continue to discuss Kelly Park improvements and what to do with that vacant paved area. Friends of Wiswell continues to work on bench replacements during the winter. And the Ballston area seniors, people's dues are due at the new year if you're a member there. They have 479 members. And that's it for me. Thank you.
And for those that are eagle-eyed, you'll notice that Trustee Cornwell's not with us. She's celebrating her mother's 100th birthday and her sister's birthday, so happy birthday to both of them, and congratulations to their family on that centennial celebration for their mom. Over to Trustee Rainey.
Okay, I really don't have much to report because Jeff was a little busy today.
I can't imagine.
Didn't send any report, but you know why.
Well, he did send that email later in the day.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to, he
Yeah.
continues to work on signs.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, he did work on the signs. But I
I guess
reported
it's
that last,
TBD. What?
I reported that last meeting.
Well, there's a new round. There's a new round. He
Well,
did the old
it's
signs.
not an official round.
Oh,
His
okay.
answer is if he has money left in his budget and there are emergency replacements to be made, he will make some of those replacements, but we'll wait for the budget years, the next couple of budget years, to work that in to replace the remainder. Because we did about half the village, 50 to 60 for some of the signs in the village, so that costs $15,000. So it's a question of doing the next steps to get the rest of them, and it was well received. So it sounds like something people want to see happen out there to replace the rest.
I didn't realize that 91 signs was about 50 to 60%. I thought it was like most of them, but it's not. Okay.
So we still have some money to be spent there, and we will work on that for sure. Okay, no presentations. Or I'm sorry, I jumped your treasurer's report, Barbara, so go right ahead, treasurer's report.
Excuse me. Mine's brief. My report this meeting will be brief, as we'll be discussing the budget process and our old business, but I have been working to prepare budget worksheets for our department heads and working with the mayor on the budget timeline and guidelines for budget requests. With the help of Bob Kavanaugh, we were able to finalize water and sewer billing information this last week, add the fees for unread meters, and print the bills to be mailed out February 1st. And I was notified on Friday that our payroll file has been released by ADP to EFPR, who's our accountants, to review and update. I will process the weekly payroll again first thing tomorrow morning, but the intention is for EFPR to begin next week. This is about a month behind schedule, but it'll be very helpful when the FPR is able to take over this aspect so that I can focus on the many other duties that I'm facing, including the budget.
Can I just ask a question? I thought it was a mistake, but maybe it's not, but it looks like last month's treasurer's report is being put into this month's attachments.
It was part of the minutes, isn't that right? From
Yes,
last
that's
meeting?
why it goes out the
Yeah.
following
It goes with the
meeting.
minutes from last meeting.
Yep.
So this one will go on the minutes for this meeting.
It would be, I find it helpful if you have a treasurer's report to put it in the attachments as a report, because then we can read it and we can think about it and maybe have some questions, because we're processing it in real time verbally along with everyone else, and then it's harder to do that. So I guess my request is that like this month's treasurer's report in written form just go in the attachments for this month.
Except it's a Monday report. She writes it on Monday.
She writes it for this meeting.
Yeah.
Oh, so it wouldn't be ready by Friday? Can you just email it then, when it's ready?
I don't have a problem with that.
Okay. Well, that'd be helpful, thank you.
Okay, let's, as I said, no presentations. Let's go to old business comprehensive plan referrals and timeline. Just to be transparent, Carla Bittner had sent us the comprehensive land use plan timeline, It essentially goes from January through to April, May of this year. That assumes that we don't have any steps where we, for instance, have the public hearing, then make additional changes and have to do another public hearing as a result of the changes, which can happen. You have to basically go back to start to a certain degree if you make those types of changes at that point. So what I'd like to do is seeing this and seeing where she had placed, received recommendations from village planning and ZBA presented to the village board. I'm going to make referrals this week to the planning board, to the zoning board, and to the historic district commission with the comprehensive plan draft attached, and asking them to provide some sort of advice or vote or whatever they feel is sufficient. I'll provide some general ideas as to what might be helpful. I haven't written that yet, but it's something to the extent of, either approve it without any kind of comments, approve with some sort of comments, or say it's not what they had envisioned, and to explain why, essentially. Something that'll give us some basis or some grounds to have that as part of the record for later on. Also, we'll be pushing this out to the public for the next month to do the same, so that we can get at least some of the public's comments taken care of before a public hearing, so that we don't have to go through that multiple public hearing approach if avoidable to that degree. So that's where we stand there. I will be working with Terry to get that out this week, and we'll keep moving that forward.
Frank, just want to, are we ready to declare ourselves lead agency with those board?
No, we're not. That's something that we can wait on as well, because for one thing, Carla not being here, probably not fair to Stephanie. It's not an emergency to do that right now, because we have a couple more meetings before we would have anything needing to get to that point. The 30-day mark will be able to start, let's say, February 13th with no effect, no negative effect. On top of that, I should say that we'll be asking for comments from the boards for March 1st will be the deadline. I'll be setting or the next weekday after March 1st. Did not look at my calendar to see if that fell on a weekend or not, but you get the point. So that's where we are there. CDTA, just wanted to provide an update. I had talked to Megan Quirk of CDTA about the issue of the scope of work they had sent in that we kind of were taken by surprise on, because we didn't see that scope of work coming toward us. But I wanted to just give her some information, get some information from her as well, just to be more well versed on where we were going with this. I did explain to her where the crosswalk was anticipated to go, which is from Trumbull to Rosewood on Church Ave. So there's that. And she was wondering why would have our RFBs right away, and I explained to her the process that was explained to us. And Sean, I almost sounded like you for about 5 minutes of that phone call with DOT talk there, but she understood what I meant, that essentially they'll study the results of the normal crosswalk with signage to see if there's a need to upgrade that later. The stuff that she and I explored a little bit more deeply was about the bus shelter idea, and there's definitely going to be some concerns about where to fit them exactly, both on Church Avenue and on Route 50 down on Milton Avenue. They were talking, and Sean and I both caught this, I think we were talking about it a little bit at the last meeting, about the possibility of bump outs to make room for them on Milton Avenue, and that could be something that creates more of a traffic bottleneck than we might be comfortable with. So I made sure that she was aware that that's something we definitely want to be discussing and have some control over at the end of the day. And the other thing, for some reason, she thinks that the bus has no issue getting through that traffic light within one traffic cycle, and I told her that honestly it does during the day. If there's a bicycle involved in the front of the bus or some kind of mobility device, that it can take up to 3 light cycles before that bus will restart its progress down Route 50. And so I just asked her to keep that in mind, because she was suggesting that folks suggesting otherwise weren't telling accurate information, and I've seen it for myself. I think you use straight edge too as your barber, or at least used to say you've seen it too. That happened right in front there. That's our barber of choice today.
But
use your button there.
yeah. I think the issue there is if they are considering a bump out, there's more than one issue. Obviously, there's an impact to traffic operations at the intersection within the corridor. There's also the issue that if they do a bump out, they're going to take away adjacent street parking or the ability to get around a left turner who is traveling northbound trying to take a left on Washington. If most people can get around, if we have a bump out there, that's no longer possible. So, as we made comments on their proposed traffic impact study, one of the comments I made is they need to do an operational analysis, assuming there's two lanes of that on those particular approaches.
May I also, it's very loud.
You're fine.
In the comments that we sent to, on the proposal, that was one of my biggest concerns. They didn't want to include a projection of traffic. So I don't know if we can have conversations to make sure that that's considered. I mean, our county is one of the fastest growing counties in the state. They're, it's just a very popular area to move to and, settle and have families, which is wonderful. But our traffic is getting bigger and to be a bigger problem, and Route 50 is very tight. So I just want to make sure we're considering that as well.
Yeah, I believe I also mentioned that if there is a situation where they impact operations, then they should look at the ETC plus 10.
Okay.
So 10 years out, basically.
Great, thanks.
Okay, and that was, like I said, just to keep people informed. They'll take the next steps with that scope of work on their end, and then keep us in the loop and get some public feedback and our feedback as well down the line. So, Trustee Cormos was working on that. I also want to make sure that we had all the up-to-date information, and they have a couple of different outlets to provide that to if need be. Budget calendar. Barbara and I have been working on this. We had a couple more iterations go back and forth today. We had a couple topics to make sure that we're being comprehensive in it, and I will give you the microphone back if you want to discuss real quickly what we've got and pass out some examples to the trustees.
Sure. Yeah, why don't I just pass?
Some of those things for you. No problem.
Thank you. So we're going to work on the mayor and I will provide written notification to department heads, nonprofits, boards, and committees regarding budget timeline and directives for budget requests this week by Friday. Following that, we'll be reaching out to the department heads and nonprofits, boards, and committees to see if they have any questions, to identify potential challenges for the budget, and to determine revenue estimates with assistance from the comptroller's office and the our accountants. February 22nd through 24th, the mayor and I will meet with department heads to discuss and finalize their budget requests. By February 27th, we'd like the department heads to submit to me the estimates and expenditures, including itemization for each expenditure and copies of quotes as needed. Then the week of March 6th, we'll have the budget workshops. Before March 17th, we file the tentative budget with the clerk. March 27th should be the presentation of the tentative budget to the board at the regular meeting. The board will review and the tentative budget and make revisions if necessary. Set a date for the public hearing and publish a legal notice in the official newspaper at least 5 days prior to the date of the public hearing, advising the date and time of the hearing and what the tentative budget is available for public inspection. April 3rd would be the day we would post a notice of public hearing. File a constitutional tax limit on March 31st, which is at least 10 days prior to adoption of the budget. File a tax cap, that just needs to be done prior to adopting the budget. April 10th will be the public hearing. It needs to be no later than April 15th. Budget may be adopted the same meeting after the public hearing is closed. If it's not adopted the day of the public hearing, then the budget must be adopted by May 1st at another special meeting. Budget must be adopted by board resolution. So if there's any revisions after that, it would have to be after the public hearing, but prior to adoption, and we could also adopt the budget on April 25th.
I would like to add that it's not really anything commenting on this, but as an aside, I would also like to see a financial analysis if we separate out water revenue from the general fund and to see where that leaves us. And I'd like to see that before we start budget workshops so that we have an idea if we end up, not saying we're even going to do that, but it would be good to know where does that leave us if we do separate out water and water revenue for a water reserve fund and versus using some of the water revenue to cover our shortfalls in the general fund. I think that's important. I mean, when I look at it, and I don't know if we separated out water revenue for revenue outside the village or revenue inside the village. But if I'm paying a water fee outside the village and my money's being used for general fund purposes, which, by the way, if I'm outside the village, I don't receive any of those services, I wouldn't think that's fair or right. And I would agree with them, particularly if I was that person. I would say, well, I don't get any of those services, but I'm paying for them. The reason I'm paying water fees is to keep the water infrastructure up so that water keeps flowing into my house. So I think it's really important that we look at that. Obviously, we may not be able to move forward in that direction because of budget shortfalls and the impact it might have on local residents, but we should talk about it and be transparent. The other thing I'd like to add is that we really should have the water feasibility study in our hands also prior to budget workshop meetings, because that also is going to have an impact on how we handle and allocate budget based on what those recommendations might be. I think it's important that we have that. I know that our engineering firm LaBerge is working on it. They still require some data, and they also are waiting on a legal opinion from our attorney. I would hope that we can expedite both those things so they can move forward to that, and even if we only had a draft, so that we would have a general idea of what we're looking at as far as costs, expenses, or the way moving forward. That's going to help us in our budget making decisions.
Just out of curiosity, you said water revenues, do you mean water revenues and expenses out of the general fund, or are you just saying water revenues and you're also make sure to look up? Yeah.
I mean, obviously, we have to pay for the operating costs, so above and beyond whatever we're paying for operating costs associated with water. What is that additional revenue? And if we took it out and separated it from, the general fund, what does that look like? What kind of shortfalls do we have in the general fund? How much money will that end up being in our reserve fund? I think those are, because we pretty much know that the fund balance we have now, the majority of that is water revenue, or profit, if you want to call it that. That's been established. We've used water revenue in the past to cover shortfalls. So I think that's a policy that was put in place because it was more or less an interim measure or a measure that just hasn't been rectified because it has inherent unfairness to folks who pay water bills outside of the village but don't receive any of the village services.
Let me do one thing here. Stephanie, you are off the hook as we are bringing in Carla as we speak here. There's Carla. Stephanie, thanks for your service tonight. Appreciate it. There's Carla. And
Bye.
okay, to be clear on what I was going to answer to you before that, every $18,000 of water revenue taken out, now that's why I'm asking if you meant water revenue or water income, essentially, would lead to a 1% property tax increase necessary in the budget. So, assuming $360,000 of water income, for instance, which is within the realm, although I think inflation unfortunately ate quite a bit of our water income this year, but let's say that was the case, we would have to raise property taxes 20% to make up for that in the general fund, just so you know that.
Those are all verbal approximations. I just want hard numbers on.
No, 18,000 is 1% of the property tax.
I understand,
just so you know
but
that.
let's just have a written financial analysis produced, and that's all I'm asking.
Yeah, I agree. It'd be helpful to have a written financial analysis.
I don't know what more you need written than $18,000. Every $18,000 that we take out of revenue will have to be replaced by 1% more in property taxes. That's just
If
reality.
it's that simple, then it's not a problem to put down on paper.
I don't expect a huge analysis because that's the analysis. Okay, nonetheless, I hear you, and I believe that you kind of did a little pirouette into the infrastructure projects list discussion, so we can keep pushing into that. Now, one of the things that you'll notice in the motions, and unfortunately because of the rules of procedure and we didn't get a chance to review how everything looked until Friday as it was, we have two competing motions, it looks like, in there, but ultimately the idea was we aren't there yet, I don't believe, and this is what I talked to Don about on late Thursday, I think it was, in terms of just the idea that we need more information still about what are these things going to cost. There was a phase 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D, and 1E with respect to these, and that is $18 million worth of stuff, including contingency. $18 million represents 3 years of our entire budget revenue. So that's not simple, and we sort of need to know some information. On the flip side, for instance, Don has down $1.8-ish million for the John Street Water Tower. Now, I think we've all kind of reached a conclusion or near conclusion that repainting is probably going to be the option, and we don't believe it's a $1.8 million expenditure. Later this week, I'm not sure, Sean, if you got to talk to Don yet, you want to invite us to a discussion, I think on Thursday, with a company that does painting and maintenance work to begin to discuss what could have happened since 2016 with that water tower to have made it an easier process and what we can do in the future to allow for better maintenance of it moving forward when we do make a move on that. So I'll work with you to, if you didn't get direct invited on that, I'll get you something there, at least a Zoom or something, so you can join us on that.
Yeah, I would like to do that.
Sure.
Because my discussions with actually DPW staff is that they're far in preference to a glass line water tank and a replacement than a repair due to the ongoing contractual services that we required on an annual basis forever associated with doing just the repaint. And glass line tanks, we already have several. They have very little maintenance associated with them. You know, I understand that LeBear says there's new technologies out there that make repainting comparable with a glass line tank. But again, we say new technologies where glass line tanks have been around for decades and are time proven. So I really need to look at how much difference there is between a replacement and a rehab, and over a 30 to 40 year period. And you know, from the research I've done, I'm highly suspect that we're going to get 30 years out of the paint job. But there's no problem getting it out of the glass line tank.
Nonetheless, as I said, we have motions asking, or at least one of the motions asking for more information, more pricing information before we can go pursue grants, etc. One thing that Don did write to me today that I thought I'd share with you, it's like late today, here it is. Sorry folks, here we go. Two things he actually said. Frank, FYI, our grant application costs are listed in the contract and will be honored, because I did ask him what they were going to charge us for grant applications since it's been a year removed, whether or not that was going to be honored or not, and he says yes, so there we go on that. As discussed, grants will be hard to obtain since village water and sewer rates are so low. Even if you choose to pursue grants, the village should plan to advance priority projects using EFC funding and or local funds. If grant applications are successful, they will be used for construction. So that was from Don Rhodes earlier today, just as an FYI to that. So that is what I've got for infrastructure projects. Ben, would you like to add anything?
Sure, I mean, thanks. I put this on the agenda actually as an agenda item. Thanks for putting it on. But because I wasn't clear if we were ready yet to have a motion or if we needed to talk about this a little more. So I was surprised Friday afternoon to see this agenda item, my original motion, and then your very similar overlapping motion right in front of it. And it just doesn't seem like we need to have the same agenda item on the agenda 3 times. So I think we can just talk about these things once and it'll be more efficient. Just to back up a little bit, as has been alluded to, LaBerge with DPW Assistance last July put together a very big list of items and put it into 3 phases. And the phase 1, the list of 10 items between $13 and $18 million, ideally accomplished by 2027. But now we're really talking about maybe 3 to 5 projects that hopefully will be accomplished in the next 5 years. Phase 2 is another 10 items for another $15 to $20 million to be completed by 2030. And in phase 3, another 4 items for $15 to $20 million beyond 2030. And so this is where we are. Last July, Don asked for 3 things from the board. One was data. Another was a legal opinion or statement about how we're going to charge and coordinate outside users and water districts. And a third was a statement from the board on what our priority projects list is and what do we want to pursue in the next 5 years. So all 3 have taken more time than we wish they would have for various reasons. And at the beginning of this year, trying to make sure this is a more productive year than last year, I emailed Don and the board where he was with the project and what he still needed. And he identified that those 3 items are still outstanding. So I then contacted legal counsel and the board to clarify that legal counsel should be working on these items, and that was not clear, so I'm glad we're clarifying that. I believe we're clarifying that as a top priority issue. And that the data, he is still working on data, he's gotten some, he's organizing, he's going to ask for more. And then the third thing is what really in our bailiwick is, what priority items do we have? So I sent a draft motion that you see here, and I asked for feedback, didn't get any from most people. And so now we have this other motion, sort of surprisingly, and I'm not sure exactly why. But we are, at least I'm happy that we're discussing this as a board. There is a, like you were talking about, there's a little chicken and an egg in terms of picking projects, but wanting to know the price of these projects, getting some more information from Don in order to nail this down. But if we're not able to nail it down, this board meeting, hopefully in the very near future, is we're all saying we'd like to move on this. And I guess we should make clear to everybody, as you again have alluded to, that most likely there's going to be some increases in the future, either water fee increases or tax increase depending on what we do with the water fund, as Sean was talking about. So the way to of course we're going to work hard to minimize that by getting as many grants as we can, by working on those things that could generate additional revenue first. So for example, the water meters, if we put in better water meters, more accurate, easier to read, that could actually increase revenue. So I think we all agree that's an important item. So that's sort of the big picture and what we're doing. Again, I'm not sure why there's 2 motions, but I guess when we get there, we'll get there. And I also agree it would be great to really get in black and white in numbers what would be the total impact if we took out the water, how much is the water revenue, just total, or, last year, and what would be the percentage and dollar amount impact on the village if that was not included. Because, like Sean said, ideally we would separate it out. And so the question is, how do you get there?
Okay. Well, I'll go to new business B and explain some of that to you. Okay. Just to explain why there are 2 motions, your motion basically said to do a financing grant application package, which means that you would actually be doing the work to get there, to send in financing grant applications. And like you said, chicken and egg, that's premature. We need to know first what the costs are, what grants and matches are possibly before we send them on a wild goose chase on that. And we also need to know if any of this is from the common grant application for the state as well, because our fire department is asking us about that information right now. So we need to know if they're going to put out their own, or if they're going to be leaning on ours. And I know Bernadette's been part of those emails as well.
I guess what I wish is when I sent this, and I said, this is a draft motion, do we even need a draft motion? Is this the appropriate one to send, or are we not even ready for it? That is my request for feedback on this motion. We don't want two overlapping motions every meeting. You know, one motion from the board, one from the, you know, it's okay to give feedback and say, oh, let's change the motion in this way or that way. I'd be very open to that, and it's a little silly to have two overlapping, very similar motions. So next time, I hope when I ask for feedback, please provide that. We'll have be a coherent, organization up here with one motion.
I apologize. It was one of 54 emails you sent in 9 days, and there's only so much we can do.
Okay.
And, with respect to responding and processing everything well, we have snowstorms, et cetera, going on. So I will take that and say I'm sorry about that, but there's only so much we can do. Okay.
Can I add one thing?
No, I'm sorry. I didn't think this is what you're saying.
I'd just like to say too, I'm kind of curious since our engineering firm laid out 3 different phases.
LaBerge, you're talking here?
Yeah, LaBerge. Why aren't we just including all of phase 1 that they laid out in our motion? Because there's like 3 projects at the bottom that weren't included. And I'm just curious as to why we wouldn't just say we're going to authorize them to do phase 1 as identified in their July 13th correspondence.
Make sure you're close to that.
Yeah,
There you go.
and maybe include water tower replacement, because in this, it just talks about a recoding, but we did want to look at the possibility of replacement. So I'm not sure why we wouldn't just be all in on phase 1.
I asked Don that specifically. I don't know if his reply is absolutely complete, but what he said was, let me show you what I asked him in an email. Question for you. Is it important that we vote on the entire phase 1 list now so that you can show funding sources, the bigger total project and cost, or is it okay to vote on it in chunks, say the first 3 projects or so at a time? And what he said was, as to what is needed, we need the board to select priority projects. That is, we need the board to choose projects it supports funding and completing in the next 5 years. We will still provide information on the entire list of projects we identified last July, but the report's focus and associated environmental review will be on your priority projects. So I think he's looking for a shorter list for his report, that he'll, I guess, provide more detail about what's involved with tower, water meters.
Yeah, I didn't get that from what he said. I think he was just basically said, whatever you decide, and that's what we'll work on.
Well, he said, we will still provide information on the entire list of projects we had identified last July, but the report's focus and associated environmental review will be on your priority projects.
Well, I think when he made these phases up, phase 1 is all the priority projects that were identified in 2019.
Okay.
So, I'm not sure why we're just not doing phase 1.
Well, but there was an A, B, C, D, and E. I think it's just like the library has a phase 1A and 1B, and they're going to work on it in that order based on resources at that point in time. It's possible, Sean, that we could look at that. Anyway, it's possible that we should be asking for the accurate pricing for that stuff and to see if there's more to that. Although I would say this, that probably the order of streets to be evaluated or worked on should be matching up with our street repavement scenarios as well. You and I have talked about that too. And we find a street that needs more urgent care, we can work with Jeff to flip streets at that point, obviously. So I think maybe we need to, I don't want to necessarily table the instruction for the stuff we are asking for, but maybe put some additional requests for the other one, the phase 1 D and E stuff, for instance, that might not be encompassed by that motion.
I guess, and we could talk more about when we get to the motions.
Sure.
But if we're not just going to go all in on phase 1, then I think there's going to be a lot more than we can accomplish tonight trying to hash out which projects are which. So.
Yeah.
Okay. New business, Front Street work and surveying. I understand we've lost some audio, gotten it back. So Carla, if you got audio, you can hear us, give us a thumbs up. Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you, Mayor. Sean, when you talk, I can never hear you. Like very rarely. And then Ben, you bumped out too for a little while. I had no sound. And so now, I don't know if it might have to be closer, but it was,
Boy, you gotta eat
I have
this
no
thing.
idea, Sean, what you said in the past 5 minutes. Sorry.
Oh. Too bad, because we're doing
See, now you're laughing at me and I can't hear anything.
You couldn't hear that either? That's a problem.
Okay, we're gonna do a couple things while we get a second. Let me get through 9A here first because it's mainly me talking for this one. And if you can hear me, Perla, just nod and we'll go with it. Good, thank you. Front Street Work and Surveying. I know a lot of people are worrying and wondering about this, and I got a report back from Labella, our main engineers, and this was the underground utility engineering study that we had asked for. And it kind of was underwhelming what we learned, I'm not gonna lie to you. For $30,000, I was a little bit disappointed. We learned 2 overall things, actually 3, let's say that. Number 1, let me take it back to an older day. In the early 1800s, when maps were much different than they are now, and there was a 66-foot right-of-way all along Front Street, except for the fact that you could see that one part of Front Street in front of the old Sansucci Hotel, I believe it wasn't 66 feet, it was wider, but it still said all through the street 66 feet. So in the 1940s, they attempted to try to compensate for that fact in that position where it was wider than 66 feet wide, and got conveyance deeds that conveyed to the village what they thought was the distance between the front of the building and that part of the sidewalk, let's say, that wasn't technically in the right-of-way, to expand the right-of-way, per se. Great. Except for the fact that all 9 buildings that constitutes now were wrong. In fact, what got conveyed was something we already owned from the front of the sidewalk to into the street. So, for purposes of doing sidewalk work, we were going to have to work with the landowners to essentially tell them, you don't want to own the sidewalk, do you? Really? Do you want the liability? And for instance, I talked to Ron Murphy already about 2 of his buildings, and he said, yeah, I would not want to own the sidewalk. So we are going to work, and there is a motion for later for Labella to help out with the work, and Carla is aware of it as well, to do some corrective deeds, essentially, and work with the landowners to get those things handled. So we will take care of that. We'll get there on that part of it, hopefully sooner rather than later. Okay, there's the fun fact that's a bit of a nightmare for us to have to spend money on and deal with, but we'll deal with it. We also learned that, as we expected, that there are utilities underneath Wiswall Park. Surprise! So there is that, and what we would like to do, or what they would like to do, and what we'll work with the county to do, is TV the sewage line that is underneath Wiswall Park to see the shape it's in, the activity, etc., to make sure it is viable. Because if it is not, we're going to have to do something, most likely, if it is in use, to replace it and figure out what to do while we replace it in terms of, evacuating sewage to somewhere else and how to handle it. So there is that at least, and so there is more to be done with respect to that Jeff and company will work with Labella to get a handle on. The rest of what we learned, they did a bunch of ADA ramps, which we already knew we needed, and the positions of them, so I'm not sure what was value added on that information. They showed some storm structures underneath that may have collapsed or needed work, but our DPW always takes care of those when we do streets, so that's not really an issue that wouldn't have been handled either. So this was, as I said, a little bit underwhelming. This is not Labella's fault or anything like that. This is what they signed up to do and priced out, and we signed yes, and we used ARPA funds for it, and there you have it. Would I do it for other streets or recommend doing it for other streets? Probably not. I would probably go more the TVing, sewage line approach, as we know we're going to have to do streets, and Sean, I know you're a big one with the whole I&I question and all that, and so that to me is what we would do probably, is TV for I&I purposes. When we know we're going to hit a street and see what we can do to improve the I&I situation there. But long story short, with respect to the work on Front Street, there will be sidewalk work, obviously, to do what we can with respect to ADA ramping. That might be a good time as well for property owners to redo their sidewalks where there is a problem on their sidewalk that needs to get handled. And I've asked DPW to give me a full report on what they believe should be replaced at this point in time based on problems in terms of cracks or unlevel situations or whatever on Front Street. Also, obviously, the street and possibly some of the work that needs to be done with the underground utilities leading from Wiswell Park is still an open issue until we see what the TV comes back like. We're gonna have a meeting with VSBPA in early February to elaborate on our approach and plan once we have a little bit more information on it. Obviously, the repaving and the other work will be aimed to happen somewhere before May 31st, as we want to keep it in our budget year, since CHIPS money is at stake still for that work with the paving. But we are aiming to make sure this is as quick and painless a process that will not affect our businesses adversely. On the flip side of all this, I'm very heartened by the idea that a number of organizations, including the County Chamber of Commerce, have stepped forward to say we want to help, we want to come up with ideas and ways to help the businesses during that time. VSBPA has obviously said the same thing, and so we are very appreciative of that idea, and we look forward to working with everybody in that respect down the line. But as far as Front Street work goes, is a to be continued, but with obviously some more information than we had a couple of weeks ago at our hands right now, and trying to get the full assessment. I'm glad that we did not do it in the fall as originally planned, because it is quite clear that we would have had to probably rip things up to do certain things with respect to sidewalks and piping possibly down the line and do this all over again. So this is a one-off scenario, and I think we should be thankful for that instead of, dreading the fact that, yeah, we don't have all the information yet we need, but we're trying to make sure we get there as quickly as possible.
Just thank you. Does the contract include the TV sewage line?
I believe since the county is going to provide the TV that we do not have to worry about that fact. We have a good relationship with the county, DPW and TV, or the sewer district with the TV.
I thought that was a big part of the contract, was that kind of analysis under there, but as long as it gets done. Can you send out the report that they?
There's no report.
Oh, I thought there was a.
No. This was a sit-down discussion. There's a map. I did try to get to the map, but it is a large map, so we would have to probably come in to get a copy of that. I can't even get that thing scanned. I don't think if I needed to.
The Committee on the Arts is also working with VSBPA. They've met or are planning to meet.
Yeah, so I think once we get a better idea in February of what the exact scheduling will be, we're going to connect the Arts Committee. They've been very eager to help the businesses, BSBPA and businesses, and find creative ways to bring people downtown that, that might be reluctant to come if they see that there's some work being done. But we want to draw people in and kind of tie that sort of time, to make sure that they're not impacted so negatively. So we're very appreciative to both organizations, the committee and then BSBPA. So we'll make sure that they're connected a little bit more. And they've had some creative ideas that I think. No, that's okay. One of there's just to throw it out to the board, just for heads up. They're thinking of ways to maybe bring art to the space right before it's going to be, kind of ripped apart, but it'll be temporary art, that might draw interest, to the downtown. So eventually, I'm sure Ben and I will be talking to you guys and hopefully drumming up some support for some unique ideas to help downtown.
And just to add to that, the other, when they were brainstorming, idea they had was some communities have very interesting stamped kinds of concrete, and as long as we're replacing concrete, maybe there's something artistic we could do with our sidewalks, for instance. But tell me again, on one hand you're saying we're going to take over the sidewalks, but then you said that you want to tell the owners that they need to fix certain things. Are we taking it over? Not all?
No, we don't take over in that. Let me just get this down a little bit. We don't take over in that way. Essentially, it comes down to the idea that we'll identify, normally in the code as it exists, and Carl and I were discussing this late last week about some of my ideas to get things changed in the code that may have been missed along the way. There's normally the 30-day notice to a landowner that, hey, something's wrong with your sidewalk, you need to handle it, and if you don't do it, we're going to do it ourselves, and we can charge you costs back on your tax bill, etc. Okay, well, we don't do that. We haven't done that, etc. And in a case like this, we don't want to be tyrannical about something we haven't done in the past, but at the same time, we want to make sure we get fresh sidewalks. Now, in the case of where we have to do ramps, there will be sections of sidewalk that will need some work done by our DPW. And Carla, that's something we should make sure of too, that ramping is allowed, just like grant spending can be allowed in those situations without it being considered a gift by the village, that kind of work being done. So we do need to add that to that component. Sorry, it's the stream of consciousness. I just want to make sure I didn't forget to tell you that.
But just, you said something about us taking over the sidewalks, like to start, what did you say there?
No, it was a question of them telling us ahead of time what needs to be handled in terms of what sidewalk sections are the worst that should be replaced all during this, so that, hey, let's all do our work at the same time so that we don't have to, have barricades up at random times down the line.
All right, so they're keeping their sidewalks, their responsibility.
That's what the code now and the code in the future would both read. There may be ways to incentivize or provide impetus for DPW to get one company to come in each year, maybe to handle certain sidewalks on streets that they want to handle in the 11-year rotation. It's something to think about. I don't think we're going to be able to get there for this go around, but you can see the value of maybe trying to work with our residents in a way that says you need to replace it, you need to handle it, but we're going to try to help you as best we can to make it affordable in those situations and not create a tax bill situation for you either. So those are things to think about that I don't think we can handle in this rewrite. But again, I want everybody to understand that there is something in the code that says we can be tyrants about how we want to handle sidewalks and need to be replaced. We're not doing that generally.
Okay, but when you said, I talked to Mr. Murphy and he said, I don't want to be responsible for that or something, what was that about?
Because he owns half the sidewalk right now by accident. And it's just everybody in that stretch
they're
of
going to give that, what are they doing? So what's the implication of that again? Can you repeat that?
We can't do work on that sidewalk.
They're going to let us do it. They're going to give us permission.
No, they're going to give us that deed.
Oh, they are going to give us a sidewalk.
Well, that's what the intent is, that we need them to all give deeds for that. Otherwise, we can't necessarily do the work because it is not our right of way. It is not our ownership at that point. Carla, do you want to speak more to that?
I do, and I also am going to request if Ben could speak into the mic because.
Oh, you still can't hear me?
No, I can hear you when you're right up to the mic. Just to let you know. Aren't you glad I'm on Zoom? You get to get all this technical information.
Thank you.
So the way we're going to do it is LaBella's going to put together all of the meets and bounds and all the language we need for the correction deed, and then approach each of the landowners and say, look, this is what happened. The intent was clear. It was supposed to be deeded to the village. There was a scrivener's error. It wasn't. We need to correct that by this correction deed. And hopefully the landowners say, okay, great, because that's really what was the intent. They send the correction deed, we file it, we then have, it is now ours. That's really what we need to happen on Front Street.
So they are handing over their sidewalks to us?
No one's handing over anything to anyone. We found this out, Thursday, I think?
Yes.
Maybe?
What's it mean when we get the deed for sidewalk?
It's like an easement kind of.
Like what?
Sorry, I wasn't sure what are the implications of that? We are now going to have the deed for that sidewalk?
We generally own the sidewalk land as right of way in this village.
All right.
So where you use the sidewalk generally, this is that question about the whole
We own it,
crosswalk.
they're still going to be responsible for it.
Correct.
Okay.
But in the current case of those properties on Front Street, those 9 buildings, we own part of the sidewalk, or they own part of the sidewalk that we should be owning. There's the problem.
So the ownership change, but the responsibility will not after this set of repairs we did.
Correct.
Okay.
Liability only means in the sense of sidewalks that you didn't fix your sidewalk, therefore you're gonna be responsible for it under code. But let's say you do maintain your sidewalk and somebody gets hurt on it, but you own that sidewalk, then you still will be liable, even though you did the right thing to your sidewalk under the code, because you own that property, not the village in that case. So, you know, for us, we're like, hey, no, you keep it, go ahead, keep it. But it also means we can't do the work we need to do on that sidewalk all the time. I think they can do ADA ramps even without that piece of it because of how deep back those sidewalks generally go, but I don't want to even risk that. Let's get it taken care of for future problems. And hey, for $30,000, we learned, oops, somebody screwed up 80 years ago, literally. Any other thoughts, questions? Okay. Capital reserve funds for water and fire. Now, this was brought up earlier a little bit. May I go out here? So, you've heard discussion about what to do with water up front as let's take water revenue out of our general fund right away. And you've heard my response essentially saying if you do that, you're risking possibly having to raise taxes 20% or 18,000 is 1% of property tax, so every 18,000 would represent a percent you'd have to increase property taxes. The way that's been recommended by our accountants several times, and also Don Rhodes, who is from LaBerge, you've heard his name bannered about a bunch of times tonight, is this. Wait till you're done with your year. See what your profit on water was. Take some portion of that profit, figure out what that is, move that over to the capital reserve fund, because then you don't have to replace the divot when you do your budget. So it makes sense. Fire has the same notion. They want to make sure that they're set up for the future as well, such that they got a ladder truck they have to buy someday, probably not too far down the line. So we keep talking about, hey, you've got $100,000+ of money we rolled over. They don't want somebody down the line in the future to go spend that money on something other than the ladder truck. So the idea is, at the end of each year, once we've seen AUD that says, hey, look, here's what the rollover attributable to fire was that year, roll that money over, or some portion of it that they would help determine, into that capital reserve fund being used for the capital equipment that they need. Carla, you've got some experience with setting up capital reserve funds. I know you can provide some a memo, at least we were talking earlier today about generally, but why don't you give some thought or feedback on the legal aspects of this?
Absolutely. Generally speaking, capital reserve funds are funds you don't touch. They're funds for a specific purpose. There are two kinds. There's a type kind and a specific kind. The easiest way to say this is there's a specific kind, which means you're creating it for the specific purchase of a specific piece of equipment, or you're doing it for a specific park, or something that's absolutely specific. When you create those kind of funds, you actually have to, they're subject to permissive referendum. So when you create them, you have to wait your 30 days to see if anybody in the public wants to actually petition for a referendum to vote on whether or not you can create and fund those. Then once that's done, if that's the kind of fund you have, you can take out of that fund without going to the public. You can put it, put into that fund without going to the public. With respect to kind funds, and I don't know why they call them specific in kind, but they do. Kind funds are like, for example, a fund for water, a fund for fire, not for a fire truck, or a fund for parks throughout the village. That you can just create. I mean, there's a process, but you create it and you fund it. You can't use any of that money, however, without going out and doing a resolution subject to permissive referendum. Meaning if you create a fund and you want to take money from that fund, you have to do a resolution and give the public 30 days to let you know whether or not you can actually use that money. So that you have to actually think about what your purpose of forming these reserve funds are.
Okay, quick question. Once you put money into those funds, can you ever take money out of those funds for putting it back into the general fund, et cetera, for instance?
No.
So that is the importance of making sure that you're not overcommitting funds to a reserve fund, because once you buy your prize, it's yours to keep, as they used to say in Wheel of Fortune in the old days, right?
Well, I don't know about the old days for the same age, Frank, but yeah, if you think about it this way, you're creating a fund. You've told the public, I'm creating this fund for this particular purpose. So the money that I'm putting into this fund is only going to be used for this particular purpose. So they are restricted accounts. You can't use them for any other purpose than what they were created.
Any questions, any thoughts on that? So Carla's going to provide us some information, some further information, a memo that covers this as well. But this is probably, as I said, our accountants have recommended this methodology so that it doesn't have an effect on budget, but it does provide us ultimately what you guys are looking for, which is some protection of funds to be used for capital purposes down the line. But it's also important to remember that you want to create a profit margin in water so that you can justify, hey, we've got profit in water, we're going to put this money into a capital reserve fund for the purpose of whatever we need in water down the line. I want to be careful. I've been trying to say it as much as I can, or as respectfully as I can, but I'm going to say it just blatantly and bluntly right now. It's not just as simple as snapping your fingers and putting all your revenue into an account. You have to think about what the implications are, why water is set up the way it is. And Sean, I will tell you, I think water is set up to be a profit-making business for the village to offset what ultimately residents have to pay in taxes, etc. And so I'm not surprised by now, having sat in this job for 10 months or almost 10 months, it's set up this way, seeing what our other revenue options are, which property taxes, sales tax, we don't have any control over, etc. So I'm not surprised by this, and this is why I'm saying be mindful of water down the line, near term especially. Heed what Don was saying about our pricing and grant opportunities, and then heed what Carla's saying and our accountants are saying about capital reserve funds as well. It is complicated, but it's understandable still too. So let's keep open minds here down the line.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate all the detail and complications of doing this. But we do feel that if it's done carefully, it is the direction that is the proper direction. I mean, I believe the state also supports that, and funders don't want to see too big a general fund, for example. They want to see some capital reserve. It's just a matter of doing it safely.
Yeah, and like I said, and I think Bernadette's going to say the same thing. I think there's a general consensus. Everybody understands there should be an intent to do this or something to reach this resolution. Just a question, I think we're always arguing over how exactly. And this is what we're trying to make clear. Also, Carla just already sent the email that's called Reserve Funds to our email, so you already have information residing there. Make sure you're good, loud, and close to that.
Carla, can you hear
I
me?
didn't want to add to my to-do list.
Yeah, I think all of us are on the same page. It's a matter of what mechanism, how we get there, how fast we get there. I think this is the way we can start moving in that direction. I think in particular for the fire department, they have proven to the village that they are very thoughtful about how they spend money, but they also have proven to us that there's a lot of need as far as their equipment and trucks. And really, this is perhaps a really ideal situation so that they can start building up that savings. So the village isn't, kind of struggling to figure out where we get funding or how they're going to make payments. But our fire department's excellent. They have been able to make their payments. They think about that ahead of time. So thank you for doing the legwork on it, and I look forward to learning more about it. So.
Is this something where we want a motion in February, where we want to try to start setting this up for the coming budget year? Is that the timing? For fire and water?
I think it's in terms of when your AUD will be released, honestly, to make sure you have something there as a receptacle for money you want to push in at that point in time. Until we close out a budget year, we're not sure if we have possibly more water expenses, for instance, that will be attributable to this fiscal year. So the raise isn't in for this budget year, I don't think. It's for the AUD, which usually comes out in, October-ish, I think it was? Yeah. So we've got some time for that at least. So probably need to start on it after the budget's done. We'll probably have a little bit more time to concentrate on that.
So we would do it mid-budget year? We wouldn't do it at the beginning of a year?
Well, again, the idea is to get an analysis of what you had as income or leftover rollover money, and then take that money or some portion of it and push it in. So we won't know that until October.
That could be done at that point.
Yeah, right. Okay. Public comment, and as you can tell with the audio issues, we're working through a computer's mundane microphone. If you do come up to talk, please come up to the podium and make sure you talk loud into the microphone. You will hear yourself, obviously, and that means that Carly can hear you, and she'll give you a thumbs up because she's that kind of awesome over there. So anybody in the room have public comment? Judy Esposito, come on down. Be careful, the wires there in front of you. And you'll press the button on that microphone and get good and close to the microphone itself. Get bend it down a little bit if you need to. There you go.
Hi, my name is Judy Esposito, 48 Chapman Street, Ballston Spa, and I'm just would like some information on the Front Street work, just to clarify a couple things. First, you said there was you were going to TV the sewage line, and you had found out, or will find out, whether it's viable or not. Is there also a water line separate from the San Souci Spring?
There's a water line going in there as well, and we do want to make sure that we don't run water under sewer. And so we're just making sure the depths are correct there as well. Whether we can move that line is one question, or maybe move the fountain or whatever you consider it closer to the street or something along those lines. I've heard different options on that, so yes.
Yeah, that's part of our plans that we've been developing and getting, community input about possibly moving the spring. But now would be the time to do it when, the street is all torn up. So I didn't know if during that study, if that's going to be also studied, because right now there's a break in the pipe. So I didn't know if that was going to be TV'd or...
Water lines aren't usually TV'd in the same way. They're observed because of the different functionality of them. But I will point that out if you believe there is a break there, and we'll discuss that. But I believe the intent here for right now is to make sure the work is done with respect to what has to be done under the sidewalk in the street, and we'll have the rest of 2023 technically to take care of anything in the park itself. And as I've said to you before, I don't think 2023 is going to be a bumper crop year for getting work done there. 2024 is probably the year to aim a lot of this and make sure we have a good master plan together for what we want to do there. But that's just one man's opinion.
Right, I just wanted to make sure that that's going to be taken care of also at the same time.
That's we're talking about underneath the whiz wall piece, underneath the ground. Can that, like Judy's asking, be fixed if something needs fixed in addition to the sewer? It's not going to wait till 2024, right? Aren't we going to fix it all together?
No, well, again, I'm not going to keep streets open for longer than they need to be. So the idea here is to assess what's under the street and sidewalk that needs to get taken care of, make sure we handle that while we have things being handled on the street itself, and anything that has to be handled in the park portion of those pipes, we basically make sure everything's paved, redone, and go into the park and handle those things at that point in time with DPW. Because remember, their paving season isn't traditionally April, for instance. And so they should have some level of time to take care of what's underneath the park if something else needs to be done. It's a question of staging of work for this thing.
But will you assess what's under the park at this point in time?
That's what we've been doing and continue to do. So that's why I say to her,
That's fine, the break supposedly in the Pike Foot San Souci Spring is at the corner of, Front Street and, street that goes downhill. Lowe's, no, not Lowe's.
it's a Spring Street?
It's the one right by where Sunset Cafe was, but that's where the break is, so anything that has to be repaired would have to be done when the road is open.
Okay, so we'll call that to their attention.
Thank you.
Yeah. Mark? Yes, please.
Rough crops.
Is that a kit in your hand, or are you just happy to see us?
What?
Is that a kit in your hand?
That's a kid.
Okay. He's happy to see us too.
Yeah. Mark Black, 10 Thompson Street. First, I should have done it last time, but I wanted to thank everyone that came to the menorah lighting right before Christmas. It was really wonderful, and thank you to Chris Biddle, who helped make the hot chocolate and served everyone. It was really nice. It was a great ceremony. We had some great press on that. The birdhouse programs, next thing is the birdhouse program is going great. We've got lots of schools involved. They're starting to decorate them actually. We have our birdhouse kit that schools and people are going to be able to get to build them. And it's really going well. One thing you guys talk about the arts committee and all that, making plans for. We have 1,000 birdhouses going, to bring people into the village in May. We have 1,000 birdhouses going up, as well as a big structure in Wiswell Park. We're starting to plan already, and a whole banner series. We're already starting to plan the Birdhouse Festival on May 13th. And my question is whether we're going to be impeded by the opening up of Front Street. Is that, in that whole thing, I mean, how is that going to affect us?
We're working to try to make this an April project, at least the opening of Front Street itself. Whether or not the work that has to be done in Wiswell Park or not coincides in the direction into May is the question as well. And so partially weather driven, partially the amount of work, and so that's what we're trying to assess right now to get it completely planned out.
Should we not make commitments until it's completely planned out?
I would say it's probably the wiser idea, just out of safety's sake, absolutely. But we'll stay in communication with you to make sure that when things will be ready, set, go, at least for use for 2023 purposes.
Okay, sounds great. There's also a motion on, I think it's K, about the signs in the village. I've asked you guys to talk. We'd like to use that in the display. We're building a big 2-story birdhouse, and the signs from the street signs would look great as the roof shingles. So if you have any extras, I would, instead of tossing them, I'd ask you guys, but I've asked you that before. The other thing is the CTA bus shelter. I know you guys are involved in the whole process of it right now, but something to think about. There has been a movement to make creative bus shelters. I could send you some, a friend of mine did one in North Carolina, and they're really cool. So instead of the usual aluminum with bad, that we could do something really cool. And there's probably some money involved that we could get someone to do that. Just a thought. Do you guys think about it? Ben?
Yeah, no, I just wondering what CDTA, if they have experience. We clearly have to get their permission, whatever we put in, but yeah, it's a great idea if we can.
Yeah, I mean, they don't have to be the normal, boring bus shelters. They can be really interesting, which would go in with our whole theme.
Yeah, great.
Anyway, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Anybody else in the audience? Gina?
I just wanted to add, I think that seniors are also working on the birdhouses, right? There's some announcement saying they're doing birdhouse decorations. Is that with you?
No, there's another birdhouse project going on. They are finding out who wants to get involved, and then they'll send us how many they need. So yeah, we're working with the seniors also. So.
Nobody caught the fact that they had a camera on our podium. You should have nudged me.
I didn't want to interrupt. I thought that would be on purpose.
Everybody say hi to Carla.
Can you hear me, Carla?
Can you rotate the camera?
Yes.
Okay. Gina Morosi, 10 Old Glory Lane. Winter Festival. You forgot about that. We have snow. We're getting more snow Wednesday.
Who knew?
So it looks like we might stand a chance to do this. However, if we get a 50-degree spell between now and February 11th, we would like to have the option to move the date back a couple weeks. Does that trouble anybody?
Not me.
I guess just keep, obviously, VSBPA in the loop, see what they think.
They're not involved in it.
Well,
The
it affects
businesses
them.
are,
It
the
impacts them,
businesses
yeah.
are, you're right, yeah. I've been talking to the businesses and they're aware that we might have to change the date based on the amount of snow we have.
Yeah, as long as it doesn't overlap with another event.
Yeah, and I don't think there's any other ones in January. Okay, that was it.
I can't believe I'm saying this, but I do hope you get snow.
I don't
I'm not a
understand.
snow
I know,
person,
I've been
but
saying the same
I
thing.
really do
February
hope there's
12th, they
snow.
can melt. It can all go away. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have people on Zoom, if nobody else in the audience. And why don't we go there? Bear with me here, folks, because I need to get this to work right. Natalia, let's see if this works for you. Natalia, can you hear us?
She's coming in.
If you unmute, you should be able to go. Natalia, are you there?
She's trying to say, I'm sorry, she texted
Can you
me.
hear me?
Oh, there
Yes,
she
we
is.
can.
Hi, everybody. My name is Natalia. I live in Milton at 9 Pheasant Run, and I own Play Hollow at 40 Front Street. I just wanted to check in because I was really concerned about what's going on as far as the sewer work that's going to happen in Front Street. And I know a lot of the businesses are concerned and feel like they are not involved or not being given a heads up. So if any of the work happens, it would be nice for there either to be a meeting or a panel that we could meet with you to give you ideas on what the traffic is like, what our inventory is like, what our plans are like. Because just like Mark was saying just now, that he's already planning events, we're planning inventory, we're planning classes, we're planning events, and it would be really nice to know what exactly is going on with that. And especially also when other committees and things like that are planning on closing Front Street, it would also be nice to be able to be involved, at least in the planning or the participation of that, just so, because it affects our flow, it affects our traffic and things like that. So I just wanted to chime in on that.
Yep, no problem. And like I said, we are planning to go through with a meeting with BSBPA, hopefully in early February. We just want to have enough information, make it worth people's time to have that meeting instead of a bunch of what ifs, which is kind of what I had to do here tonight more than I wanted to, but obviously we've made some progress and I wanted to at least give that information. And Sean's been on me to tell about what we learned from the Front Street analysis so far. There's still more to be learned, is what the answer is there. So we're working on that very, very fast for you guys.
And I very much welcome talking to Gina about Winterfest, since I haven't had the opportunity to yet.
Absolutely. I passed that note on to her last week after you and I talked, and she said absolutely, no problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No problem.
One person.
Ready to vote at this point.
Who's that?
There we go.
I can't see.
And Nathan Ward will be next. Nathan,
Nathan.
I'm going to try just doing allow to talk, see if this works. Let me know.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. Nathan Ward, 1 Pine Boulevard. The BSBPA is happy to bring back Chocolate Fest on Friday, February 3rd between 4 p.m. and 8 p.m. We currently have 24 businesses. We are still looking for 2 chocolate chefs. So if you know any chocolate chefs, send them our way. Yeah, and make sure parking's going to be a little bit crazy, so the county lots are available after 5 p.m. So that's a good place to park. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thanks, Nathan. Multitasking over here. Anybody else? Going once, going twice. Chris DeMuke, sold to the man in the back row. Coming up. Good loud inside that mic, okay?
Gotcha. Chris Buke, 6 Camden Drive. I just wanted to come up and point something out that was brought up during the last meeting. And it was part of a resolution, but I believe it should just be left as it is. And I'm referring to some of the Facebook announcements here that the mayor does put out. This more recent one that was just put out today to bring awareness for a very important event that's coming up in our school here at the Ballston High School. The No One Walks Alone event. I think that's very important, especially how the mental health of our children has been impacted over the past couple of years. With that, I also want to thank Mark for the work he did on the menorah for the village. That was a great event, both for the village as well as for a lot of the kids that were in attendance, and also for my one son. He was greatly impacted over the past couple of years, and to give him, the privilege and the honor to do something along those lines. I also got great feedback. Mike, who runs Real McCoy, great guy, great business. I spoke to him about it as well. He couldn't attend, but we've got some divisive years, and there's been a little divisiveness across the country, across the state, across the county, even in our village. He said that was just a great opportunity for many people on both sides to just come together and celebrate something, just celebrating your community as well. We also had some friends there as well that had just come back from Israel. They've been there for a couple of years, and it was just amazing to see something like that. They never thought they'd see that in little Boston spot, as opposed to something they would see regularly, take for granted in Israel. So again, just a huge thank you for that as well. And I'd like to continue to see this. I'm really seeing a lot of good stuff here with the involvement with the school as well. I know Trustee Cormos couldn't be here tonight, but I wanted to follow up with her about what was going on with the civic seal readiness and try to incorporate the high school and maybe even the middle school and some of those students with being able to be a little bit more actively involved and civically engaged. It's unfortunate that civics is no longer taught in school, but I think sometimes it can be role modeled, and especially in events like this, at board meetings, outside of regular school board meetings. So again, great to see this plugging into the local community, into the school, and also thank you for entertaining one of my young men who decided to harass or cheat push down at the police station, and then make a follow-up visit to the mayor's office as well. So very much appreciated. Again, this is one of the few charms that this village has that other places do not have. Again, it really does take a village, and again, I can really proudly say I do love the local village events. I think it really does apply. We may not always agree. Maybe sometimes we can get a little bit vocal with one another, but again, in the end, when it really comes down to it, we really do to come together for that. So again, thank you. Just want to applaud those efforts on everyone's part as well.
And that was Officer Thorpe, your son actually was hanging out with that day, and he was doing a great job with your son, and your son was asking some really tough questions. Future village policeman right there, folks, I think, coming up. And the other interesting thing, it's funny who you meet at basketball games sometimes. When I went to the CBA game, sat next to, I believe it's one of the government teachers in the high school, who said that we will be visited by those that need to get their fulfillment done very soon, and gave me kind of the ground rules of how much time they're supposed to be here, when they're not allowed to walk out of a meeting, and all the signature stuff and everything else. So coming soon, the kids are coming. Board comments, questions, concerns, anyone?
I just wanted to remark on the Hanukkah celebration. I was very moved. I had friends growing up that just were never represented that way in this community, and it was awesome to see. And there were like these two late teenage girls, or maybe early 20s, and they were so excited. They were just so psyched to participate and see that in their own community, and have have something that they've grown up with celebrated in our community. So thank you, Mark, and everybody on the events committee and everybody that was involved with that. It really was a moving, wonderful event in our community. That's it.
Anybody else? Good. Cool.
Just a couple of thoughts. Yeah, thanks, Mark, and everybody involved. That was nice, very nice ceremony. I appreciate it. Something I just want to bring up, Frank, just some feedback. Like between meetings, it seems like we don't get a lot of feedback from you when we ask questions, and it'd be nice to get more. Like there's not a lot of response, like if we're asking. So that's just an observation I had the last 2 weeks. So, whether it's what time do you want a special meeting on the sidewalks, or do you have ethics code, or, different opinions of Carl's to-do list, or, just there's some things that were pretty important that we want to know we want to know your opinion, we want to know are we moving on this or not, and it's helpful for us to, I sent an email when I saw these two motions on the agenda, like why do we have to, I sent 2 emails on that, like, do we need 2 motions, and we're not getting really much information back on when we ask you questions, and so the request is, I know you're very busy, you got a lot to do, but it's helpful for us, for our jobs, to have communication with you between meetings, and to know whether we're moving in the right direction, whether you're thinking we need to change something, whether it's this motion, or something, Carl's to-do list or whatever, or an ethics law, whatever it is, or a special meeting. Just having silence makes it difficult to know what's going to happen and how we're going to do it and how quickly and all that stuff. So even if you just tell us, I'll get back to you on that, or something is helpful, because I just feel like a lot of stuff went out asking, not just for your opinion, everyone's opinion, but you're the leader, and so you set the tone of what will or won't happen potentially, so it's helpful to get a little more back from you when we can.
Well, like I said earlier, when you get 90 emails total between 3 trustees in about a 9-day period, you don't know what to begin to respond to. And a lot of those emails from you come at 10:30 p.m. to midnight, and that's where it gets
I don't expect me to respond. But, I'm working during the day, so sometimes that's as soon as I get to it.
Can I make a recommendation? I wonder if some of those emails, because there were numerous emails that I try to keep an eye on things and chime in where I think it's appropriate, but it was hard to keep track, and I wonder if there's a better way to kind of consolidate your questions, or if you feel like you're not getting a response, all of us has phones. If you really needed an immediate response, call any of us. But it was a lot of emails, and I'm not complaining because I deal with a lot of emails anyway as part of my job. But it certainly would make it a little bit more possible to give you a response. Just a thought.
I hear you. I think there would be fewer emails if we got a response on the first email, so that also would help. So, for example, asking multiple times, what's a good time for a sidewalk special meeting, or a meeting with Carl on a to-do list or something. I try not to send excessive ones, but sometimes I'm very interested in moving something forward between now and next meeting, and if I don't get a response, I do tend to repeat myself. I'll send it again. So anyway, response the first time helps reduce the size. So I wouldn't have had to send 2 emails on Friday about these 2 motions if we had dealt with that before that, for example. But I'll try to be mindful of not too many emails. But you're right. This, when January 1st hit, I was like, you know what? Let's focus and do some things and move forward here. And I'm glad that people did take that and go with it. And but it's not clear what's going to happen until Friday afternoon when we see an agenda that we know that, and even then we don't know exactly what, why 2 motions or what's on this agenda, there's an item on the agenda, but we don't know what's gonna be talked about. And so it makes our job harder. We're not able to prepare, we're not able to follow through our questions if we get information. So anyway, that's the request.
I'd like to add that it's just simply the more we cash out outside of the meeting, the shorter the meetings are. That's just simple logic. And I think we need to get better at it, all of us, in collaborating as Mr. Otten said one time, a week or even 2 weeks before, okay, here's what I'm thinking about, what does everybody think? And form consensus. That way when we come in here, we kind of hash out what we need to hash out, and then we're just relating to you how we got there. It would expedite the meetings, streamline things, and we all deal with it. I think everybody who has difficulty with work-life balance, and then you're us and you have work-life balance, it's even harder. But it's part of the job.
Allow me to expedite the meeting when I ask for a motion that the attached budget transfers be approved.
I'll make that motion.
There are no budget transfers to be approved. That was trick question. Sorry, guys. Sean, ready? Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Terry, what should we do with B and C? Do we get a response?
Oh,
I'm
got a
sorry, I
response.
did not catch that the
I
dates
got a
already passed.
Thank you, Ben. Chief got back to me. The dates are correct with the exception of the date of the letter. They had passed, so I'm not really sure what blip happened, but I don't believe they're necessary at this point if they already happened, so withdraw.
A, B, and C are done. Okay, are you ready? Be fast, Sean. Take a motion that the DPW be authorized to expend the amount of $12,000 for rock salt.
I will make that motion.
Trustee Raymond.
Oh, okay.
I'll second.
Trustee Baskin. Discussion. If you have to ask why, look outside. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Can I get a motion approving Labella's scope of surveying work for Front Street properties for an amount not to exceed $8,000 and authorizing the mayor to execute the agreement? Just as a side note, this is what we were talking about earlier about the deed mess up from the 1940s and resolving it now.
I will make that motion.
Trustee Fandesa.
Second.
Trustee Raymond. Discussion.
Just wondering where the money's coming from, which line item?
Most likely from fund balance, to be honest with you, because this is unanticipated, but it's got to be handled. So this is one of those unavoidable moments, I think. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Can I get a motion that the 190 newly removed street name signs be deemed surplus and that those signs may be scrapped, auctioned, and/or sold? The manner of disposition of each sign may be determined by the mayor with the assistance of DPW staff, and the mayor may execute any needed documentation related to such disposition.
I'll make that motion.
Trustee Fandesa.
I'll second.
Trustee Raymond, discussion.
So it doesn't say you can give it away, scrapped, auctioned, and/or sold. So can we give it away?
I would say it's a 1 penny sale at that point, and probably is covered there. Carla, don't give me that dirty look. I saw that. What's your thought?
I don't know what you're talking about, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
No, I think if it is something that you declare surplus, and it's not something that has any actual intrinsic value, then it's not a gift.
Oh, so we don't have to worry about it.
Well, it is metal.
What do you call it?
Yeah, it's scrap value, so there is technically, and this is what was told to me.
We'll borrow.
We'll borrow.
Yeah,
but can we just sell it for a penny?
We'll just.
Then you have to make sure that you're not going to just hand it to someone who wants that street sign for historical purposes. You're gonna have to get some kind of remuneration in return.
Or they're willing to borrow it and give it back?
Would it be
For
surplus
an
at that
extended
point?
period of time or for a short period of time?
Sure.
3 months.
3 months.
They're just borrowing it, you're not giving it to them or selling it to them.
Okay, so I think we're okay with the way the motion reads, that we all understand that it could be lent out before disposition. We just want to make sure that they're deemed surplus at this point. That's the key here. Anybody have any further discussion or issue?
So.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if technically we do need to say something about that. It's not included in this motion. I don't think it's a big deal. But does it matter, Carla? If the motion doesn't include that we're going to lend this out?
That we're gonna lend it out? It doesn't matter, because just like you're lending somebody, a pencil and they're gonna give it back to you. It's still village property.
Okay.
You're not gifting it to someone for title changing, so to speak.
Good on that, Sean?
Yeah, so I wanted to ask Mark, so they're gonna use the shingles or roof of some structure? Yeah, who's doing the work? Who's putting assembling it?
Actually, BOCES is going to build the structure.
BOCES is building the structure?
BOCES is building the structure. Curtis Lumber will be delivering the structure, and DPW will be installing it. The shingles will be put on by DPW on site. As they always install the Wiswell Park sculpture. So they'll just be drilled, and screwed into wood. The signs will just be drilled and put, attached to the wood structure. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, that's what.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And so you'll be able to see them, these signs, and we'll put some decoratively around it, of course.
So it sounds like DPW is going to be handling these metal signs multiple times.
Multiple times, meaning?
Well, they have to take them down, they have to bring them to the thing, they have to assemble it, they have to disassemble it, and then they have to scrap it.
They're assembling on site.
They're assembling it on site, is that what?
Assembly on site is what's being said in the audience.
Which is what they always do for the Wiswell Park sculpture. They always disassemble it.
Okay, thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Can I get a motion authorizing the purchase of a 2023 Chevrolet Silverado 3500 HT pickup truck with SSV plow and aluminum liftgate? I feel like I'm on the prices right now. From Mangino Chevrolet for the price of $63,998 in connection with the DPW equipment USDA loan, and authorizing the mayor to execute the attached letter of intent related to such purchase.
I will make that motion.
Trustee Raymond.
I'll second.
Trustee Mendoza, discussion. All in favor? Really?
Do we need to bid on that?
We were talking about the function earlier. This is what we've generally done to make official the actual purchase of the stuff that we had approved to be bought in principle through the USDA loan. So this is actually saying, go ahead. The price is actually slightly higher than what was the contract price, but the loader came in $5,000 under. This is $4,000 over due to the delay in ordering, so it basically ends up being a wash.
But we don't have to go to other vendors?
No, this was based on the state pricing originally and the fact that we're willing to eat the $4,000 because of the time delay. This was the best price found.
So the best price was found? There was.
Jeff shopped around, he landed on Mangino, he didn't get official documentation on it, but he basically said, here's the best price I can find on this pickup truck with these options on it.
Okay, but in general, we should document when we do that, right?
Not necessary in this because USDA had a contract pricing already. It's still based on contract price. I see what you're saying. It's still based on contract price. This is new contract price because it wasn't delayed since June or July when we originally got contract pricing. So it's still contract pricing he's got from Mangino. It's just, it went up.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Apologies for the confusion on that. It took me a second to see where you're going with it, but I got there. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Can I get a motion scheduling a special meeting of the village board held on January 30th at 7:30 p.m. to discuss this draft sidewalk law? No other agenda items will be discussed at this meeting.
I'll make the motion.
Trustee Baskin?
Second.
Trustee Raymond? Discussion, I don't believe we need this, and I think we could actually handle anything remaining on February 13th because I don't see, and I was talking to Carla about this. Carla, you're the handler of the law here. Now, I gave her some thoughts on things that need to be changed from some of the original discussion points we've had over the last year about things that we probably needed to change, like the grants situation, or nobody's provided the curb specs. And I said, well, I think we, or at least many of us on the board said, take the specs out, put it into a schedule that refers to the ADA, the state rules, and anything DPW wants to add to it with our authorization, so that we don't have to change the law every time a spec has to be changed like that. I also suggested to her that we need to have a better definition of replacement and repair, that this is one of those confusing things historically in the code for sidewalk, and give us the ability to even consider different remuneration on what's given back to the person for a complete new sidewalk versus a simple repair or replacement up to the 50% maximum, which is law in the state no matter what. Those are the types of things that I sent back to her. Carla, was there anything major that you saw from other trustees that need to be added that would cause us to need to sit down for a 2-hour meeting, for instance?
I don't think that, and I've explained this in my emails to the board last week, I don't think it's necessary to have a special meeting, but, I'll do whatever the board wants me to do. I think that you guys have done a very good job of vetting the sidewalk law. What started as just, hey, what are the fees, turned into, we reviewed it, and I said you might want to change a couple things, and I think the board has done a yeoman's job of going through and really doing some changes to the sidewalk law. There's not a whole lot that are out there that are different or are controversial or require intensive meetings, but again, that's up to you. If you want to have the special meeting, I gave you my schedule for that.
Thank you. Well, it's not like I want to meet again, but at the last meeting, we talked about it, and your opinion wasn't as clear on that then. My only hesitation is there's some sticking, I don't know that this is like really a partisan thing, but there are certain issues that, you can talk about one thing for 20 minutes, it's just, so for example, right now I think in the law it says, a maximum of 100 feet is, we'll pay for X amount up to 100 feet. And, someone in the public said, oh, don't limit it to 100. So that's a discussion, that's a question. The other issue was, should the fee be less for businesses or the same for everybody? So, it's we could come to consensus very quickly, or it could be an extended conversation. So that's why I thought maybe a separate venue might work. I find that it's hard over email to reach consensus. So, people will send their opinions, but if there's different opinions, it's hard then to say, okay, well, where are we going to end on that? Same with the curbs. Liz is suggesting, I think it may be a good idea that the village, if we can, take over responsibility for the actual curb, which is a completely different cost structure, and to me it makes sense anyway. But so there's those kinds of things to talk about. I don't know if they're contentious or not, or would take a long time, but they do exist. There's probably some others in there that I'm not thinking of right now. So that was sort of the motivation behind like a separate venue to do this.
But I don't see how going to another meeting without maybe going to poll the residents about some of these issues that you're raising, because some of these is the first, I've heard a couple of those before, but in passing, basically, I don't see how we're gaining anything by showing up on January 30th. I'm not even sure I could be here, to be honest with you, on January 30th. I don't think Terry or Jennifer can either, to be honest with you. But either way, why don't we go and figure out a mechanism to get some more public input before we go to public hearing with it, where we risk making alterations at that point and having to do it all over again because we did something that the public didn't like. I don't think it's us that needs to have this happen. It's the public that needs to hear some of these ideas before we set them in stone. We got a couple of weeks before, or 3 weeks before the February 13th meeting, so let's go out and get some information.
Yeah, I mean, that's another function that could happen with a special meeting, is that, all right, public, we're having this special meeting. Before and during the meeting, tell us what you think. Again, it's not like I'm vested in having a special meeting, it's my opinion that the resolution of differences happens better in a conversation than in a bunch of emails. And I predict that the conversation could take a little time, longer than we want in a regular meeting. So if we don't have a special meeting, then that means that the next board meeting, we go through the whole thing, I guess, and we try to hash it out and figure it out.
Well, I think you isolate issues that you're spotting that haven't been fully agreed upon for whatever reason. Maybe go out over the next 3 weeks, like I said, grab some consensus from residents. Hey, what do you think about this one versus this? And then come back on February 13th, or in the meantime, talk to each other in email, say, I think we're pretty good except for X, Y, Z. Let's talk about X, Y, Z at the meeting on the 13th. Mm-hmm. And then say, after that meeting's done, hey, Carla, the final revisions based on this discussion, and let's set a public hearing at that point for February 27th. And try to approve on February 27th, or even wait for the first meeting in March, which is probably also on the 13th because of the way the month works. But nobody's installing a sidewalk anytime soon. It's winter time, so it's not like we're botching timing for anybody right now. We have some time. Take a deep breath here and work together. But I don't see many differences, and that's why I said I went through it with Carla line by line literally last week to say, here's some things I think we missed. What else are you hearing, or what else do you have from the trustees? And I didn't hear anything that was like, whoa, no, that's never going to happen type thing.
Yeah, I think I didn't think we were very far apart on where we were on. There's a lot of things we disagree on, but I think we all want to achieve, the sidewalk code revisions. I think we've had success sending comments to Carla, and she kind of aggregates, and I don't think we're that far off. It would be worth it. Again, thankfully we're not under like a time crunch. I do appreciate, Ben, though, that your eagerness to, check it off the list. But I think we can come together and figure out something by the next scheduled regular board meeting in February. So that's my thought. I mean, happy to work on stuff, but I don't think we're that far off from each other on the issue.
I hope you're right. I'm not convinced there won't be sticking points that take a significant amount of time to hash out, or differences. Again, it's not as if these are life and death, but are we going to limit it to 100 feet? Or, the public and businesses, of course, would like more money than less. And then it's our responsibility to say, well, we don't have an unlimited amount of money, and what do we think is reasonable? So, public comment is going to say, pay for everything, do it all.
But payment isn't in the code.
Well,
payment's in the schedule. But reimbursement is in the code. It's in the schedule, and by state law, we are limited to 50% by state law.
Right. No, but are we limiting 100 feet? Are we having business pay? Just those issues. Anyway, it's just an example of where public comment will get you so far, and then you just have to look at other considerations. Anyway, I'm willing to try it this way. I guess one thing that I just like to say is if you're one thing I've noticed, and this sort of goes with my past comment, is you'll communicate with Carla, but we don't see it. Like when we send our comments on the sidewalk law, we send it to everybody, but you're just telling it so we don't know what your comments are. So it would be good when you're emailing Carla, because we don't even know you have comments. So it would be good to include everybody when you're emailing Carla, just so we know what the status is of what you're thinking.
That was a phone call, and Carla, unfortunately, because of her schedule, she was going to push out all the comments that I had put out, and all of yours as well, and she's just run out of time. She had got us the ethics revision, I think, literally before the meeting. Carla, I was going to ask you if you want to talk to that as well, but I was going to ask you, when would you be able to put out a document that says, here are all the comments I've received to make changes on the sidewalk post, so we could identify, oh yeah, easy one, yeah, no way, let's talk about
I
that
thought we
one.
got that already.
No,
We
because
had-
we've had subsequent conversations.
Recently, you've talked to her.
Right.
Because she sent us something, 3 times she sent us the sidewalk law at this point.
But
so-
she also changed discharge, for instance, and I said to her, the discharge of the sidewalk also needs to say street. And also, we need to have penalties related to that
So that's
specifically.
since she sent it, you requested her to send you the sidewalk law.
I'm happy to address this.
Thank you.
Then you went back and gave her some more. Okay.
No, okay, I'm happy to address this. I sent comments on, January 12th. And, or I sent the,
Most up to date.
the most recent draft with all the comments, that I had at that time incorporated therein on January 12th. And, that included the discharge, actually, I think I updated it after that and sent another one, which included the discharge that we talked about at the January 13th meeting. On Thursday, the mayor and I chatted, by phone, Thursday afternoon maybe, and, he went through the sidewalk law with me. And, you know, I have my notes here, which you can't see, but I have my notes from my conversation with him, which I have not been able to put into an email to send to everybody. So, you know, mea culpa, I didn't get that done Friday. But a lot of it isn't crazy. One is you left the word tricycles in when you should have taken it out. And one of it's, you know, it was to talk about streets instead of just sidewalks. So it was a lot of little things like that. But I will be sending out, what I would propose is, since I sent out the email, I got more comments. I thought we were at our final draft, but then folks had more comments, which is fine. I will take those comments now and incorporate the easy ones, you know, adding streets and whatnot. And then I will identify, this is where I see there's differences between this person and this person and this person and this person. Or I will say, in my opinion, I believe this is an area that you might want to discuss. That's just going to be in my opinion. You'll have to figure out if that's the way you want to do it. I am in a seminar tomorrow, actually the one about First Amendment rights and audits and open meetings and all that fun stuff that actually is helping you guys. So probably Wednesday or Thursday, I'll be able to get everything to you. Knowing we have 3 weeks until the next board meeting, which the mayor told me today I didn't realize. But I do need to know, one of the things that I have not gotten is the design guidelines and the specifics of, you know, folks wanted to put in the actual code the specific measurements and guidelines, and I don't have those. So I don't know who has those, but I don't have those.
I think Liz did put something in, I don't know if we all agree that they should be in there, but there's something in there, there's a paragraph of measurements in there.
But I don't have like measurements for the curves. You can see in my comments on the side, I asked comments on it. But I can get you whatever I can get you, I can get you by Thursday.
Can you double check all the comments that we sent you is in there, please? Just to make sure.
Yes.
For example, the first sentence. Exactly, you know, so.
Yes,
Okay.
I will make sure I double check all the comments.
Thanks, so, yeah, we can try this, and see how long it takes. And I'm skeptical, but we will give it a shot. Do we want to use this, meeting date for the ethics?
I still won't be able to come January 30th, and Terry and Jennifer said as well, so I'm not sure that makes sense either. So I would say, can we take, we'd have to table it anyway.
This is just an example of how we do want to try to get things done. So at the last meeting, we said we would not schedule a meeting during the meeting because it would just take a lot of time. So we said we do it after the meeting. It's been 2 weeks, multiple emails asking about a good time to meet and not getting a whole lot of response from some people. So, you know, if we don't do it right now, here and now, do we agree, first of all, I guess, that we should have a meeting for ethics? Do you think that's gonna be necessary?
I received it, half an hour before the meeting, Carla, give or take,
Received what?
ethics revisions.
No, I'm not talking about doing that right now. I don't know, what are you implying by that?
I'm implying, I don't know where we stand with respect to that code, and so I don't know what it looks like, and what I would suggest at this point.
So, the first question is, do we think we need a meeting to hash out our differences? As you said, that there may be more involved with hashing out the ethics code than the sidewalk code. Again, I think a meeting is the best, most efficient way to hash these things out in person. Is the group feeling like a special meeting would be helpful for the ethics law? I feel it would be helpful.
The original draft that we were given, to me, was actually a very good proposal from that committee. It was far leaps and above, leaps and beyond is the terminology, from what our ethics code was. And if it's close to that, no, I think we're going to be on good grounds. And I'm not sure that we need to go through. I'm happy to discuss it further with you, Ben, on email, or we can, jump on a phone call, you and I, if we had differences of opinions. But I think it's actually in pretty good shape from what they proposed. That's fine.
I need to, just for rules here, ask for a motion to table H, which is for the draft sidewalk law on January 30th. Can I get a motion to table that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Trustee Bandenza? I'll second it. Roll call?
Trustee Raymond?
Yes.
Need my microphone.
Yes.
Trustee Baskin?
I'm gonna say no, because I'd like to have this meeting.
That's okay.
Trustee Von Dingson?
Yes.
Mayor Rossi?
Yes.
Motion passed.
To table.
Motion not passed.
The
Table.
motion is to table.
Motion to table.
Table, the motion is
Oh,
table. There we go.
God, just don't do anything right.
We love you, Terry. Gotta give a motion scheduling a special meeting to discuss the draft ethics law tentatively scheduled for February 6th at 7 p.m. Final date and time to be decided at the board meeting.
I'll make the motion.
Trustee Baskin.
I will second.
Trustee Raymond. Now discussion. Please do not rehash that entire discussion.
Sorry. Comments from before.
Yes.
Pop in.
You're not available.
I'm unavailable February 6th.
Right, yeah, there was another email after this saying taking
I
that as a
understand, but that's not what the
meeting.
motion was. So I just wanted to make
But I know, I made a request to change this motion, it wasn't changed, so that's what we're having now. So no, it doesn't have to be February 6th. But again, I know I had some comments on the ethics law, Liz did. I just think
There
it's,
was a lot of comments. There was a lot of comments.
Well, then I have no idea where to go with it.
All of them,
well,
I incorporated all of them in.
I think the next place to go with it would be a meeting, to figure it out.
I gotta tell you that my focus right now, beyond, doing community-minded things, et cetera, for the community is on budget. And so I don't really want to get sidetracked with any time I do have on something that we could be handling over time, try to narrow down the issues that may exist here, and then, come to a table at that point once we're reduced it down, not necessarily at a normal meeting, but just at some point when we know we're not going to have a 5-hour slugfest for no apparent reason. I don't think that's good optics either, to be honest.
I have a question.
Sure.
I personally, I haven't had a chance to review it after the comments. Has anybody else?
No.
Had a chance?
No,
It was
So it
just
sounds like we
then.
need to do that first.
yes, I agree with you.
Frank, did you provide comments?
I did not provide comments besides I thought it was excellent as done. I had a couple little word changes I would have suggested, and I never really got a chance to put those in, but grammar, it wasn't even anything like that.
So I think everyone's comments have been in for some time, so the one you just sent, I'm not sure what changes is there from the one you sent, the 11th or so of January?
That red line's
Are we
got to be
talking about the ethics law then?
Yeah, we're talking about the ethics. You just sent something today, 6 p.m.
I just sent it with, if you remember last week, I believe it was last week, beginning of last week, I had asked, for all of the, are these all the comments, are these what everybody sent? They were yes. Sean's was on a Google Drive and I couldn't get to it, so he got me permission to it, so I got the permission, I took his comments in it and I incorporated them. So what you have is the results of my emails the past couple weeks verifying that I had all the comments. So that's what you have in front of you. It is all of your comments, which yours, a lot of them were very similar, but there were like whole parts. There's a lot that was added to the code. A lot was taken from, I think, the Cahoe's code that folks wanted to put in this code, so that was put in as well.
Yeah, Sean,
And I do have some comments and questions on there. When I was unable to incorporate what you folks wanted, I did put a question or a comment on the side so that you could tell me those two.
So, Frank, you want to wait until after April?
I'm not saying that necessarily, but I'm saying I'd like to focus on budget with free time I have, and in the meantime, I'll try to look at this, and Bernadette, I'm going to assume is going to do the same thing, and we'll stay in communication in some way about, hey, yeah, we got to talk about this part added or this part changed or whatever, and we'll keep a running list, and then when we feel like we're in a more comfortable position with a little time to do it, we can sit down and do it. But we're going to have 3 budget workshops most likely in March, and normal meetings in February and March. And obviously the February meeting's not going to incorporate sidewalk code. We are probably going to hit the comprehensive plan discussion in March on top of budget. So we have to be careful here in terms of what we're doing to not just ourselves, but to the community in terms of our focus. That's my 2 cents stuff. Can I get a motion to table?
I'll table it.
You're going to make the motion to table it. And somebody's going to second it?
I'll second.
So Trustee Mendonça, discussion, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion to table carries. Okay, here's the JK conundrum. Are you okay with me using J as the framework, Ben, based on, it's an overlap of all the projects, it's just wording things in a way that is more the information we need, I feel like, to get here?
Yeah, that's fine, we can start with J.
Can I get a motion to request LaBerge to provide grant and match information regarding available or anticipated grants related to and cost estimates for work and services for 1, the John Street Water Tower replacement, 2, John Street Water Tower rehabilitation, 3, water meter replacement in the Village of Ballston Spa, 4, water meter replacement for customers outside the Village of Ballston Spa, including work with municipalities and water districts to conduct such a changeover. 5, Geyser Road well generator work. And 6, Malta water connection issues due to a lack of water main loop.
I make that motion.
Trustee Mendonça? What are you two?
I think I'm feeling like this is an example of where we should have some more conversation and communication before we vote on this. So I'd vote to table these 2 motions.
I'll second. Now we have to go to motion to table. Okay, so first we go to discussion here. Okay, what would you like added or discussed? So I guess this is where the question
Well,
is.
just more, I guess, correspondence, communication information on, for example, the 2 things that were not in the original list, which it could be complicated, the water meter replacement outside of the village, and also that number 4 and number 6 is very vague in terms of what that means. And I guess in general, I'd like to encourage us to send these motions, about last meeting we talked about sending all the motions before noon on Thursday, and at least give us a chance to ask questions, review answers, and do more communication rather than see something at the first time at the meeting And,
I didn't talk with Don until late Thursday, to be honest with you, Ben, and some of these things I asked him about. I said, hey, this is the Malta water connection issue and potability question, essentially, which I wasn't even aware of. I was asking him for information on it and realized that it's an issue that probably needs to be discussed and looked at.
right, so it makes sense to hear from Don directly and see what he can share with us.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Ben here. I think there's more here that probably needs to be hashed out than we can do at this meeting. So I would vote to table this and either merge these and certainly have an offline discussion. Because again, this doesn't include everything in phase one, and I'm not really certain why we're not including everything in phase one, since those were all considered priority projects. So this sounds like a conversation to figure out, are we going to include all of phase one? And if not, have a roundtable as to what we think the priority projects are. And I think this can be achieved, like it could have been, if we knew about it sooner, just through emails and developing a consensus.
Well, the emails, like I said, came from Don himself. I mean, some of this information I was not aware of. Water meter differential between in-village and out-of-village came from a conversation with Don on Thursday also, as a reminder to me that, hey, there is a much different process involved between the two, and I also try to warn him that I'm not sure it's as easy as we think in the municipalities outside the village to get that work done, because there's a cost that comes with it still to their residents, even though there may be a grant that offsets that, I feel.
Frank, are there deadlines coming up, or are we for crunch for time with some of the things that Don is asking us to?
Nothing that he's flagged. I think it's just a question of making sure that nothing in the consolidated grant application would be affected, so we could ask him that question. We'll get an opportunity later in the week.
So I'm very happy that these two motions, this motion is on the agenda and that we're talking about this, and I think we're close to understanding what needs to happen and what to vote on. But let's do some more communication with Don and amongst ourselves between now and next meeting, and get a motion that we understand what we're going to do.
Okay, so you want to table J and just skip K basically at this point? Is that where we're going with that?
That's fine.
Can somebody make the motion to table J?
I'll make the motion to table J.
Trustee Baskin?
I'll second.
Trustee Raymond? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. K will not be handled. Other business?
I wanted to ask you about the facilities advisory committee. Could you give us an update on where we are with that?
I am working to assemble names for the advisory group. And again, name basically specific names connected with the village in terms of Dave Fountain, Bill Lewis, Bob Kavanaugh, for instance, Jeff Garies, Mike Morrissey, Dave Bush. Just a question of nailing down exactly who our developers are and getting final answers from planning and zoning on who their two representatives from each board would be. So working on that.
Do you have anybody who has expertise in facilities planning and real property development?
Most likely, well, yeah, those are two separate questions, and I would say yes and yes. I don't want to name names and embarrass anybody on that, but I believe yes and yes.
Will one of those names include Trustee Cornwall?
No, we're not.
Well, she's as qualified, I think, as any village resident and has decades of experience in this. I'm just curious as to why her name would be included.
Well, Mayor Rossi's name isn't on it either, and he would have that same kind of expertise, and all I'm doing is facilitating. I'm not actually giving my 2 cents on this whole situation. I'm basically putting together an advisory group and saying, here's your charge.
Okay, so you won't be attending meetings?
I don't anticipate it.
I'm sure.
So you won't be attending meetings?
I do not anticipate it.
I'm sure Liz Cornwall's going to give her input when she's here at the meeting, so I'm sure she's not going to not have opinions and not have input, so she'll be fine.
Okay, well, I'm just saying, if if one board member is going to attend a meeting, that should allow all board members to attend
I
that
think
meeting.
any board members are attending.
Well,
Technically, no. Technically, that would be an open meetings law issue if they're gonna give input and there's more than two, and that's why I would probably avoid it myself to not create that kind of scenario and let people do the work that they're charged with at the end of the day. But that's us being.
Go ahead.
Well, it's just, if that's the case, then I would hope that any correspondence or progress or updates that you would receive from, including meeting minutes or any other documentation that you might get or the committee produces would be sent, to all the board members.
That's the intent.
In a timely fashion, like as they're being made, because we ultimately have to make the decision on whatever recommendations, and I would rather not be caught flat-footed having to go back and do my due diligence and have a time constraint when, if we're in the process from the beginning and through the entirety, we're up to speed and it'll just streamline the process.
So noted. Can I get a motion that the attached vouchers be audited and the meeting be adjourned?
Wait a second. I'm not
Here.
I have other business here.
Oh.
I just want to agree with Sean. I think she has tremendous amount of expertise. One of the best leads we have currently, she helped nurture and cultivate at this point, and she has brought many different ideas forward that have been promising, and she has so much experience in this area that it would benefit the committee to have her at least listen in and be able to attend their meetings and receive their information and share her information, because she has a lot of information, so she has that expertise and energy. Also, as I've noted, there has been in my opinion, a lack of information coming to the board beyond the mayor. It's been sometimes difficult to get information or a full picture of what's going on in a timely way. And so having her there just solves that issue, because she would communicate with us on a regular basis. So for those two reasons, it would be helpful, I think, for her to be on the committee, and I don't really understand why we wouldn't allow someone with that kind of expertise who is also on the board and can bring information back to the board on that committee. So again, I'm also going to reiterate that
As I said, so noted.
if she's not on, then we are going to be very sensitive to the timing and thoroughness of the information we are given. We don't want to be put in a position of, here's your answer, here's your choice, and you have 2 days to say yes or no. We want all the information in a timely way where we can digest it and understand it and ask questions and all that, because it's such an important issue and we're responsible for it. The other item, the other thing I think probably particularly important in this venue is for the committee to sign conflict of interest forms or no conflict of interest forms, because they could have conflicts of interest with the properties that they're evaluating.
Okay, so guys, this is why it's a mayor's advisory group, because the red tape and onerous nature of committees is exactly why nobody's signing up to be on our committees for the most part. And so this is an idea to try to get people with experience and information into rooms or into positions to help us get the information we're going to need to make these determinations.
It's a form. And it protects the village and ensures everyone understands
They're
what
not
their
making any
responsibilities are.
decisions. They're not making decisions on behalf of this village.
It makes even more important that we're not steered in a certain way and blinded to other opportunities. That's part of the issue here, is the communication, vetting, and flow.
Okay, you said you had other business?
Yeah. I mean, Carla, what is your legal opinion about the prudence of having this advisory committee on buildings sign conflict of interest forms?
Well, I've never seen the conflict of interest form. And
It's what we all sign, I think. Basically what we all
Okay,
sign. Sorry.
Okay, I don't sign one, so I've never seen it.
All the elected
because I-
officials.
Okay, well,
All right.
they aren't elected officials, that's the whole thing.
But so does staff. All right.
I'd like to give my thoughts. I don't know as if there's any necessary reason to have them sign a conflict of interest. I would assume that they would be on there and they would not be, on there saying, I'm gonna do this for my own business. But there's nothing really, because they are not elected officials and they are not appointed officials, they're not getting money from the village, you can't really tell them, and they're not making any decisions. They're really advising, and you can always ignore the advice. There's nothing that, like T-wise, enforcement-wise, you can do to go after them. You should have an understanding with them, you could have a conversation with them at the beginning, but I would say you would do that for every committee, and every advisory committee that you would ever have.
Well, that's what I was wondering is, don't we have our other committees and boards sign conflict of interest forms? I believe they do.
But this is not a board committee, this is
But-
a mayor's advisory committee, it's different.
You were just referencing that other volunteers don't sign, but they actually do. We do have a
I did
precedent.
not say they did not sign, I said I don't know.
All right, well, I believe they do.
Okay.
So anyway, I think it would make sense and would not harm anything and would make sure we're all on the same page and is not a burden. And I think other committees do that and boards.
That is a board decision, it's not a legal decision.
Yeah. Just wondering where we are. Carla, if you have any information on the crosswalk right-of-way research, is that?
She
Frank
had,
mentioned you were working on that?
She had unfortunately collapsed the Front Street work into that. I think it was the same thing. So we had a conversation yesterday. It was yesterday, actually, on a Sunday, getting it straightened out. So she's working on that. And it's an interesting topic that is actually relevant to Front Street, too. She's correct in that respect, where the question is essentially, where there's a sidewalk, is the presumption in the village, even if it's on a state highway, that a sidewalk is village right-of-way, for the most part, where it's not state right-of-way. Interesting question, and it probably needs to be determined for other reasons, not just this saving money on a survey issue.
Right, that was my mistake when when we started talking about Front Street last week, and that was about right of ways, and that was about sidewalks. I lumped it together, and as soon as I sent the email yesterday, the mayor reached out to me and said, "You forgot about this one." And I said, "Isn't that the same thing?" His response was, "No, that's totally different." So,
And we need this to
so
happen.
to add it to my list because it was a Word document.
And we need it to happen before we do a motion for paying LaBerge or Labella any money for.
Well, it did too,
Because
before
it
we
might-
execute that agreement,
You
because
still think it might reduce the survey or?
it could. Again, if it is village right-of-way by rule, then the grant would totally be inside a right-of-way, be a village or state, and they could design that without needing to do a survey at that point. If it is not, then we actually have some issues, because whose land is it? Are they going to end up in a situation where we have to get their approval, yada, yada, yada? And so, there you have it. Thank you, Bella.
In regards to the survey for the crosswalk, in the past, I know from precedence in my job that if there's a pre-existing sidewalk, a simple letter or a phone call maybe to the permit issuer, saying, hey, this is what we have out here, this is how it lays, we're not gonna go beyond the existing structure, but we're uncertain about exactly where the boundary lies. Since it's a pre-existing condition, quite often they just say, well, as long as you're not gonna go outside of the current area, we don't have a problem with it. So, I mean, if you could get sign off from the permit engineer that would be, feasible, that might also save us a lot of money.
I don't think this is gonna be a huge pull for Carla, in terms of, I think it's gonna be one of those, it's either yes or no, depending on how the law reads, type of scenario, so it's a research issue, but a brief one. And then from there, if it is a no, and then I think we have to go that route, Sean, and then if that's a no, then we have to pay money, basically.
All right, well, thanks for moving that along, I appreciate it. Department presentations, where are those?
They're coming, so I just figured we had some things that were coming up in this meeting that might be contentious, that I wanna go 5 hours. We're gonna try to get one meeting basically scheduled up, and when we see meetings where we don't have a lot of issues stacking, we'll go for 2.
All right, you think it'll start in February?
I'm hoping to, yeah.
Okay. All right. Do we think that we can get the motions out by Thursday noon? Not the whole agenda, but just the motions?
Ben, we're trying, but again, last week with the holiday at the Monday, I try to wait to talk with Carla about where progress is on certain matters. And again, she and I didn't get to talk until Thursday late afternoon to even get there. And still had some open issues on Friday into the weekend, but I punted as well as I could on Friday with that. So we're trying here, but again, we had another holiday Monday start last week.
All right, well, I appreciate you guys trying, because it really would make a difference in our ability to move on motions, understand motions, and have the right motion.
Even if they're just a draft motion with the idea or intent, but still need to flesh out the language, just the basic subject matter, I mean, that would be a huge help.
That's true.
Anything else on the Ben hip parade?
Can we post committee openings on Facebook and website?
If they're filling vacancy, I'm working with the chairs when possible to work with them as to what they want to do, if they have people in mind, if they have things. So I'm trying, in fact, we got one interest thing that you and I did, and I put it Burnett earlier for arts. And I've asked, and Burnett had asked me to hold off on any movement on that one. She was working with Kate and Katie to see what their ideas were. So I'm going to be hitting them up this week to see where we're going. I had sent a notice to Caitlin last week about the same idea about Parks and Tree Board to see where we're going with that, because we had some issues come up, and it was a good time to say, hey, by the way, we still have to talk about who we're replacing. So
right. Those chairs are requesting that their openings be posted on Facebook and website, and there's the.
I'm happy to hear directly from them when I talk to them. But this is one spot where I don't need a liaison to provide that, because I am actually independently reaching out to the chairs.
I can tell you, as a liaison who has talked to them, and as part of my role, I'm bringing back to you, and you can double check if you want. That's not necessary, but you can do what you want. But I'm telling you, they have asked for these things to be posted. There's also an ADA committee, at Liz's project.
Well, I'm confused on that one, because I went back and looked, and we had how many names on the ADA committee? So did we produce a document that didn't have accurate names on it, or what happened there?
Well, maybe she wants additional people. So she did make the request to publicize that committee, that there are openings on that committee. So obviously it would be helpful for recruitment to get volunteers involved in government if they knew that there were opportunities. So
I don't have that request. So
you don't have it? I think she might have sent it to Jen, maybe. But
I think we can sort this out offline. This is extending
this
meeting.
I've asked a few times for these to be publicized, so that's why I'm bringing it up here. But I don't see it as controversial.
No, I'm not saying it's controversial. It's just something we can discuss and let people go home.
I mean, I hope we just do it. Like, there's no obstacle to do it. That's what I'm hoping. So, all right. Thank you for listening.
Make a motion that the attached vouchers be audited and the meeting adjourned at 9:22 p.m.
I'll make the motion.
Trustee Baskin.
I will second.
Trustee Raymond, discussion. I'll hit you if you do.
The only thing we talked about that I didn't get feedback on was lawyer meeting, but we just got your to-do list Sunday, I think, so I'm okay waiting and looking at that list and getting back to you. And maybe we could do it by email, who knows?
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. I didn't have a gavel tonight, so.
9:23. That's not bad.
Night, everyone.
It's our sound, everybody, but we will be fixing that. I don't know why I put out on us.